Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and this is my husband Drew. And on this channel, we talk about life and relationships after leaving the church, and we also do some commentary on the goings on in evangelical Christianity. So Christians were going wife hunting at the Passion 2026 conference, and I want to talk about that today.
Okay, so for people who are not aware of what wife hunting means in the Christian context, you would think that these types of people might actually be going and hunting women, but in this circumstance, they're doing that more metaphorically. No one's being injured.
Nobody's being injured, but there's definitely like an active hunt going on.
Okay.
Like, it's not like deer hunting or something.
Yeah.
But like, they're on the hunt, I guess I should say.
Fantastic. Yeah, let's talk about it.
First of all, are you familiar with Passion Conference? Do you know what that is?
I have images in my head, but
Okay.
We'll see if I don't really know.
Okay, so it is an evangelical conference that is put on every single year. It started in 1997, I believe. And it was started by this guy named Louis Giglio, who is a pastor and an author, and Chris Tomlin. I'm sure you've heard of Chris Tomlin. Yeah. He's a Christian artist. But basically, it's a multiple day conference that's held every year that's mostly aimed at college age students. So most of the people there are going to be from 18 to 25. And it's a church service, basically. It's like a 3-day long church service with a lot of worship and a bunch of speakers who are basically preaching.
Bryce Crawford spoke at this, didn't he?
No.
He didn't.
I'm surprised.
Oh, okay. Wow.
His daddy, Chris Connectly, did, but he didn't. I would not be surprised if next year he's speaking, though.
Okay.
Like I said, the first conference was in 1997, and it was actually held in Austin, Texas, where we live.
Oh.
The first one was in Austin, Texas, and it had 2,000 students at it, which I feel like for a first-time conference is quite a few people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot for the size of like a conference, but I mean, given that Allie B. Stuckey has hosted an event at Prestonwood Baptist Church with 4,000 people, and Allie B. Stuckey is like...
Her views on YouTube
right.
are like less than mine.
Yeah, she's staying afloat because she has a big, like, hulking, like,
Blaze media.
Media empire behind her, not because anyone watches her. And that's, so anyway, yes, that's big, but for the Christian world, it's small.
Not, yeah. But still, I think for a conference, it's pretty big. The conferences were very successful pretty much right off the bat. And over the years, Passion conferences and Louis Giglio have come out with their own record company. It's called Six Step Record, and it's owned by Louis Giglio. They've planted a church in Atlanta, Georgia, and this church is a mega church, and it also has other campuses around the country, including DC. It's spawned something known as Passion Music, which is part of that record label and is one of the most
that sounds
successful
familiar.
like CCM bands,
Yeah.
I suppose. So tickets for Passion 2026 were $189. For a 3-day conference, I feel like that's actually not very bad.
Yeah, that's actually kind of on the low side for something that long.
Yeah, and especially I think for students, I think that that's a pretty affordable price. But bear in mind that what this conference is basically a church service. So you're paying like almost $200 to go see something that like you could get at any church, basically. It's just that it's like on a much bigger scale, and they have like a huge band and huge like screens and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This last one, it was from January 1st through the 3rd, and it was held at a venue called Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, and approximately 45,000 people, mostly students, were in attendance. And speakers this year were Sadie Robertson Huff. Do you know who that is? She's Duck Dynasty. She got famous because of Duck Dynasty. Yeah. Jackie Hill Perry, which I'm sure you know. She's the author of Gay Girl, Good God. And Cliff Connectly, of course, because Cliff Connectly has become like a celebrity apologist, especially in the last few years, because he's worked with a lot of Christian influencers.
Yeah.
So I first want us to take a look at the wife hunting TikToks, and I've collected about 6 of them. They're all kind of the same thing, but I think it'll give you a sense of what mostly men were doing at Passion. And yeah, it'll give you a sense of what was going on at this conference.
Why do Christian white guys wear streetwear stuff like that? I hate it.
Yeah.
I know that's not what this is about, but I hate it.
It's just kind of is like a dumb guy look a little bit to me.
Yeah, it is.
Everyone at Passion trying everything they possibly can to find their soulmate. So they're writing down their numbers and their like usernames on IG and onto paper airplanes and throwing them into the crowd, just hoping that a woman will see it and like DM them, I guess.
Like evangelicals do this kind of thing where they like to, like it's a form of divination, but they come up with some kind of mechanism of communication either with God or with other people supposedly or with themselves. Where a little bit of randomness is inserted, and then they ascribe the outcome of that randomness to God's divine hand. So, you throw the airplane, it's like, oh, it was, guided by God's hand. And if it goes to someone that doesn't want to be with me, then God, gave it to them to prevent me from being in a relationship. Right. But if he gave it to someone who does want to be with me, then that's God's hand saying, you do need to be with this person. I do think it's kind of funny, though, is that, these paper airplanes aren't flying particularly well. So it's like, so you're giving God a mechanism of randomness with which to move. But you're kind of limiting him to like a few like square yards around you and the airflow of the inside of the building. Like God is limited by the environmental factors and your airplane design. So how random is it exactly?
Well, I think that they would say if God really wanted me to find my wife at this conference, then he would come and lift up the paper airplane and make it fly exactly to the person it's supposed to come to. It's interesting to me because I think that this method, in a way, even though it seems, like you said, like complete, like inserting randomness and it seems completely out of control, I think it actually is giving people a sense of control because they feel like, okay, I've gotten the ball rolling, and from here on out, God is completely in control of where this paper airplane goes. In reality, there's no control going on there. It could end up going towards a woman who says she's interested and DMs you, but maybe that woman isn't actually for you. Maybe it was just a random person, Well,
then that was just God's will saying no.
Yeah. But it's like, what would probably be more effective than just throwing airplanes into the crowd is like seeing a woman that you're interested in and going up and introducing yourself to her and letting it go from there. I think that that's probably a lot more of an effective way to do this.
Yeah.
But bear in mind, we are in our 30s. These are mostly like, from 18 to young 20s, where maybe going up, especially with younger generations, like going up and talking to people might be intimidating. And so like I can understand it, but I also just feel, I don't know, it doesn't feel like a very, very effective method in my opinion.
I think you're very much right about the control thing. It's actually about giving them a sense of control, because if they're thinking, well, God's just going to guide me effectively to meet the person I need to be with at Passion, then God doesn't need you to make a paper airplane. God can just make you talk to each other. He can seat you next to each other. Or if not, he can make it to where you meet in the parking lot. Or he can make it to where you bump into someone 6 months from now and you both learn that you were at Passion and you talk about that. He can do any of that. He doesn't need your paper airplane. And so, any kind of ritual you do whatsoever is about the sense of control that it gives you, not...
Well, and we also have to consider... making little paper airplanes and throwing them into the crowd makes for a really interesting TikTok.
Yes, it does give you a little bit of control of the algo.
I should know. I'm going to have to change the music in all of these TikToks probably because it's copyrighted music.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, people. Bros really trying to find their wife at Passion. And there's a guy that's wearing a shirt that says, looking for a wife.
Why are they yelling at women across a parking lot rather than going up and speaking to them?
I think, again, this makes a really interesting TikTok.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily about, like, they actually want to find a wife. Ladies, this is my friend Ethan. He's trying to find his wife at Passion. His is on the airplane. I hate that is also like a conservative Christian guy thing. They're like constantly going like this and like going like, I don't get it.
It's a douchebag fuckboy thing.
Yeah, that's like the impression it gives me too. But it's like, okay, why are you trying to look like a douchebag, but you're also at a Passion conference and trying, like, presumably you're very Christian. So like,
Yeah.
those things seem to kind of like contradict to me.
Well, I mean, no, I think that they work really, really well because, like, conservative Christian men and fuckboys actually see women in almost the same way. It's just the actions that they do are slightly different, or at least the fuckboy does now what a conservative Christian man who's following his own rules does when he's married to a woman.
Right. Yeah.
But effectively, they're kind of the same. Women are objects to be used and consumed.
Right. Yeah. Fuckboys kind of treat all women shitty, and conservative Christians, they might think in their heads shitty things about pretty much all women, but they are only really treating their wife shitty.
Yeah. At least in individual ways. They do treat, all women badly, but that's through like more of a systemic thing. Not that they're actually going and saying like, I hate you to every woman.
Right. Before we continue, allow me a brief moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, Aura. So you guys know that recently, just out of curiosity, I decided to do a quick Google search of my name, and I was absolutely shocked to find much of my personal data listed on random websites. These websites had information on my past addresses, relatives, places I used to work, and even my professional licenses that I've obtained. As someone who's extremely cautious about what I share about myself online, especially given the type of content I produce, I was quite alarmed to know that this information was so easily accessible through a quick Google search. I am also constantly finding that my email inbox is flooded with spam and promotional emails, even from companies that I've never given my email address to. Like, you guys know, this is really embarrassing, but I do have almost 40,000 unread emails in my inbox, and most of these are just spam from random companies and random websites. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one with an overflowing inbox. At least I hope I'm not. This is such a common experience because these companies, known as data brokers, sell your personal information, such as your email address and phone number, to other companies and marketers. And what's really messed up is that these data brokers don't need your consent to do this, and they'll even sell your info to scammers and stalkers. You can request that they remove your info, but often they make the process so confusing and tedious that it's almost impossible, and this is where Aura comes in. Aura does the hard work for you by automatically removing your info from these websites, and they'll keep it off for good. They also offer a range of additional features as part of your sign up. If they find your phone number, email, or social security number on the dark web, they'll send you an alert immediately. They'll let you know fast if anyone tries to use this information to access your credit or bank accounts, and they provide you with $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst happen. They also have a bunch of other features like VPN services and antivirus software that keep you safe online, all inside one app. And this is so much better than dealing with all of this on your own or by using separate software or systems. Here's the best part. You can go to my link, aura.com/antibot, to try out Aura for free for 14 days. That's more than enough time for Aura to find out if your data is exposed. I hated finding out my info was floating around out there for anyone to use, and I don't want to be vulnerable to future data breaches, and if you don't want to be either, you can go to aura.com/antibot to try them out for 2 weeks free of charge. All right, thanks Aura. Now back to the video. POV, Passion 2026 is over, and the only woman you spoke to was a door holder.
That one to me kind of comes off almost as a little bit more like self-aware, kind of satirizing the others a little bit. Like he's not actually filming any sort of attempt or anything like that. He's just like referencing the fact that people look for their wife at Passion.
Yeah, to me, I think that this is more of a response to these TikToks, because the handful of TikToks that I have like shown you are just a small percentage of all of the TikToks about like going wife hunting at Passion. So I think that like this was kind of already a theme at the conference and something that people were talking about around the conference. So I think with these guys, they're more like responding to the fact that that's happening. But yeah, I want to read this comment that I saw on one of the TikToks that I thought was really interesting. Saw a lot of y'all making these TikToks, but no moves being made. So many girls were looking for a man. You guys just didn't step up. Left with zero conversation. And I think that this is really enlightening, or this is really speaks to what was actually happening at this conference. Because like I said, this was like kind of a trend almost on social media surrounding this conference. People were talking about the fact that there were a bunch of young men looking for wives, but people who were there were very aware of the fact that this was a trend, but they didn't actually see any of these men going up to women and actually making the conversation happen or approach anyone. And so to me, I think that this was more just like a trend and something that falls in line very much with evangelical culture. Because another thing I wanted to talk about with this is that I think going to a conference and trying to meet a potential partner or like trying to find someone to go on a date with, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And I think even making that known or making content about that is not inherently wrong. What I find strange about this is that they weren't going to this conference to just find somebody to date or just to meet interesting people. It's that they were going specifically to find a wife. Yeah. Apparently, allegedly. And that falls in line very much with evangelical culture surrounding like dating and like marriage.
Yeah. So obviously there's that underlying structure of this. Young people are often looking to either hook up or become partnered in some way. That's a thing that young people do, Christian or not. But looking at specifically the evangelical element of this, like what other motivations do we see behind making this content? So there's just like the cheap, like they're trying to get attention on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, which again, that's not like an inherently bad thing. We make content. It's fine, whatever. That's not a criticism. But what else is there? And to me, the answer to what else is there is that it is, I think right now in the kind of political zeitgeist in evangelical Christianity, it's thought that young people need to couple and reproduce like white people. That white conservative Christians need to get married and have as many kids as possible as soon as possible in order to like bolster the country and save Christianity from the invaders from the Muslim world and from the non-Christians who are all deconverting all your kids. And, you know, obviously they're not speaking on any of that explicitly, but I do wonder how much that kind of like political undercurrent, it's not even an undercurrent, political current in conservative Christianity right now is influencing the kind of almost virtue signaling that may be occurring here by the fact that they're actually, look, I'm looking for a wife. That's inherently a good thing for me to do.
I think that is definitely playing into it, because I would imagine that a lot of these young people that are going to this conference are very much fans of people like Charlie Kirk. And that was something that Charlie Kirk spoke a lot about was like the most important thing that you can do is get married and have lots of kids. Yeah. And now that he's gone, his wife, Erica, is kind of taking the charge with that. And it also, if you look at the speakers that they had come and speak, I mean, it was people like Jackie Hill Perry, who her whole thing is, I gave up a lesbian lifestyle because of God. And now look at me, I'm married to a man and have a bunch of children. Yeah. And pretty much all the other speakers like Sadie Robertson Huff, I don't know, I'm not as familiar with her. I don't know how much she focuses on like dating and marriage, but she's also married and I think has multiple children. And so like that is very much within the culture. And so I think probably to a lot of these kids basically that are going to this conference, they're not thinking that it's a possibility that they could just go and meet someone to go on a date. It's like, no, it has to be marriage or nothing. And I think that that puts such an unreasonable amount of pressure onto young people who are already dealing with a lot, especially right now in the country. And they're going to a conference that's already going to have so much pressure with it. Like the whole conference is supposed to be like a revival thing. You're supposed to rededicate your life to Christ. And that comes with a lot of pressure. And now you have this pressure to like meet your soulmate. I don't know. It just, that's the thing within evangelical spaces that always gets me is like, everything is elevated to this like life or death situation. Yeah. And I just know for myself growing up in that culture, how anxiety inducing all of that is. And there's another TikTok that I'll show you that I think really exemplifies what I'm talking about. We'll get to it later though.
Okay. I think elevating just looking for someone to be with to the level of like a divine mandate like they are, it does put a lot of pressure on you. It also enchants the experience in a way. And I guess I'm trying to use that word in the way that like scholars of religious studies tend to use that, in that it imbues it with even more meaning, which feels self-transcendent and spiritual. And I think that for some people, they'll be like, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I feel like I'm missing in this world, which is all driven by like, let's face it, conservative Christians don't usually put it this way, but like I live this like very dry, gray, materialist, consumerist life with no enchantment. Everything is mundane. And so when I go to these passion conferences, that pressure that I feel that like enchants the experience actually makes me feel really enlivened.
Yeah.
And I think
that's why it's called passion.
Right. And in the whole revival thing, it gives you that feeling. Just the unfortunate part of that is that, you and I grew up in that. We've experienced that pressure. And unfortunately, you often come away from that, an experience which you may feel at the time is actually good for you. It's revelatory, it's enriching, but you can come away from those things with insane levels of baggage and trauma. Yeah. Like you may go there to try to find a wife and it feels like you're on this like divinely ordained mission from God and it feels great, you have purpose, but then if it doesn't go exactly the way that you might want it to, then oh God, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Or if it does go the way that you want it to, later on you may realize that you rushed into something or made decisions that just kind of felt wrapped up in the passion conference, and now you are engaged to or married to someone who is definitely not a good person, is not right for you, and all of your rationale for being with this person is like so transcendent that if you go back on that, your commitment to them, it's almost like you're going back on God entirely.
Right, yeah.
So there's kind of a double-edged sword to that. I think a bit of enchantment is very good. That level of enchantment gets really dangerous, though.
Well, and that's what I was going to like add on to what you were saying, is that I'm not against people having these kind of like more spontaneous, like in the moment, passionate spiritual experiences. I think that that's actually something that can be very helpful for a lot of people. But I think that it needs to be done in a way that's very informed and you understand what you're getting yourself into and what factors are going into your experience, whether that's like the music or like the people you're around or listening to a really motivating speaker. I think having an awareness of what's actually happening like in the physical world to make you feel like you're on this spiritual plane, I think is something that's really important. And at these types of conferences, there's no like discussion about like what you're consenting to being involved in. It's like everything is like, this is God and God is speaking to you in these moments. And I think that that leads people, like you were saying, to making these kind of impulsive decisions where whether or not it's like getting married to somebody that's actually probably not a good match for you. Or a lot of people after these types of conferences will like change their entire life and like feel on fire for the Lord and make these like really big dramatic changes all of a sudden. And of course, most people can't stick to those things
Right.
because
Yeah.
they're just impractical.
Yeah.
And so then, when you can't really stick to that, when you're no longer like on fire, then you feel guilt and shame and like you're doing something wrong and like you're a bad Christian. And it's like, no, it's okay. Like just, for myself with like witchcraft and stuff like that, I went through a period of time feeling really, really excited to do that kind of stuff on a regular basis. And that eventually kind of dwindled, and I don't do like rituals as often as I did. And like, that's okay. That doesn't have to mean something bad about me. That doesn't mean I'm doing something wrong. That's just like naturally kind of the cycle that humans go through. And there's nothing wrong in that. You're just kind of going with the waves as they crash, I guess.
Yeah. I think you touched on something really interesting about how instead of there being informed consent at places like Passion, you have what I would consider to be consent through coercion. So if you go to like, say that you go see a show and you meet somebody there and you're both like really feeling the music and you kind of like, whether it's you're speaking or it's just like wordless, like you bond in that moment, in that experience, while there's no discussion of, before the show, like, hey, just to let you guys know, music and being in a crowded space with a bunch of people who are really liking the music can produce like this thing that, Emil Durkheim called collective effervescence.
Yeah.
It can make you feel self-transcendent, and it can make you feel different than normal life, and it might affect the way you make decisions and interact with other people. There's no discussion about that beforehand, but I think most people generally kind of understand that can happen, especially if they go to shows a lot.
Yeah.
And most importantly, if you get up on stage as a performer at one of those things, you don't get on the microphone and go, I just want to let you know that if you are feeling anything right now, that's God. That has nothing to do with me. That has nothing to do with the music. That has nothing to do with the crowd. Has nothing to do with my cadence. It only has to do with God. Like a metal musician getting up there who, before he's about to like absolutely rip, is just like, you guys ready to see or listen to an awesome song? This is about shooting blood from your cock. No. And so instead of having informed consent or kind of an implication that this is a material, mundane experience, or at least something to be expected, what Christian music and venues like this do is coerce you into thinking that anything that you experience is not a product of their creation, and that is a lie. Yeah. And so, I would consider it to be, it's like almost like misinformed consent or coerced consent.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking
if you even
about
want to use the word consent in there at all, because there is no consent given. They don't value that in the first place.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I really believe if you're somebody who, I used to be super into worship, and I was like on the worship team at churches that I went to as a child, and like I was very much into that. And that's something that I look back on like very fondly now. And like I don't regret being involved with that, because I think that it was something that was important for me and still is important to me. But I kind of have redirected that energy into like going to shows. Yeah. Like if you're somebody that really likes that experience, just go to a show for a band that you're really into, and you're going to probably feel the exact same way that you do at church. And except for you're not going to have this like added pressure of like, now you need to like take something very deep from this experience and like apply it to your life. Instead, you can just let it be what it is, which is just, that was fun. I felt some type of way during that, and that was great. Yeah. Like it doesn't need to be more than that. Yeah. I would say, unfortunately, there is kind of an issue of like, for some people, once they have the awareness of what materially is happening to them during a worship service, like once they have that awareness, it kind of takes away from the experience. And so that can be an issue that I don't really know how. I'm personally not that type of person. Like I can be very like aware of like, oh, the music, the drums are, the drummer's drumming harder now and that's making me feel more pumped up. And like, I can be aware of that and still experience it and like enjoy it. But for some people, having that awareness makes it harder for them to enjoy it. And I'm not really sure how that can be like tackled, I guess. Okay, so now I want to look at some other TikToks that came out from this conference that are not necessarily related to the wife hunting thing. Although this first one is somewhat related. When you actually meet your husband at Passion. So that some of the comments say, don't go to Passion to find your husband, go to worship Jesus. Hey, so she's not saying to go find your husband at Passion. She's reflecting on it because it's happening right now. Hope this helps. Also, if you don't find your husband there, that's okay too. Hey chat, this is Emmy's story, but might not be yours, and that is okay. So this is the influencer formerly known as Emmy Moore. She got married, and now she's Emmy Brookins. And I see this TikTok as also kind of a response to the trend.
Yeah.
And I think the point that she was trying to make is that, you know, honestly, I actually don't know exactly what the point she is trying to make with it. Because from her TikTok, it kind of would seem to suggest almost that she's bragging somewhat and saying, oh, all of these people who say that they're looking for their wife or looking for their husband at Passion aren't actually doing it, but I did. But then when you look at the comments, people are commenting and saying like, oh, Emmy's not saying that. She's just saying this is what happened for her, but it might not necessarily happen for you like that. And she's hearted those. I feel like this is kind of like a confused response. I'm not completely sure what she's trying to say with it.
I mean, so here's my take. Seeing this, I didn't see this as she's making some kind of prescriptive statement. She's not saying what you should do or what other people should do necessarily. Like, not necessarily. Maybe, but not necessarily. What she is saying at least is, I found my husband at Passion and look, this is really awesome. Like that, I think at minimum, that's what's being said here. We can say that like pretty much for sure. But it is easy to read some kind of intention to like tell other people what to do from this because she's an evangelical Christian. And when they make some kind of statement about something being morally good, it is an attempt to tell other people what to do. That is the way their morality works. If they say, this is good for me to do, it necessarily means it is good for you to do. And in fact, you must do this. So because we're used to that, like, you know, cultural script from them, I think it's easy for us, anybody, whether they're evangelical or not, to read that into the video. So did she intend it? I don't know. Was that communicated? Still probably, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you make a good point. And I think that we can't necessarily speak to like what her motivations were for making it. Honestly, she probably just saw that this was trending and wanted to jump on the trend too. Yeah. And was like, oh, well, I met my husband at Passion, so I'm going to talk about that.
She probably just wanted to share her wedding videos and pictures and stuff, which everybody tends to like to do that, so.
I think the thing that bothers me about it is, and this has been the case, I feel like for a lot of Emmy's content, is that it's like all very like surface level, where it's like there is some sort of like underlying, like you were talking about, like moral implication to it, but it's like presented in a way that's very surface level. She's also the influencer that made a bunch of reels where she was dressing up as characters from the Bible. And like,
oh yeah, but they were also like a slightly suggestive.
Yeah, like I wouldn't say suggestive. I would say for evangelical Christianity, her outfits were pretty immodest.
Yeah,
and they also were not like, your whole premise was like, I'm going to dress up like these women characters from the Bible, but like none of them were actually related to the period or what those women would have worn. They were like a bougie version of it, where it's like these characters in the Bible were a bunch of mostly like poor people. Like that's who the Bible talks about a lot of the time. Well, I mean, it talks about like kings and stuff like that.
And calls them bad.
But especially I feel like with a lot of women characters in the Bible, I mean, a lot of them are like prostitutes or just poorer women.
Yeah.
And you're almost like
turning their identity into like a consumerist, like
yeah,
a thing to consume.
It's a very consumerist way of looking at it that seems very detached from like, how is this related to religion? It's like you've made a suburban version of it.
Yeah.
And it's just like there's very little self-awareness and it's very surface level. And so I get the same kind of like impression from this TikTok where it's like, I'm not really sure what you're trying to say.
Right.
With it.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if I'll unpack all of this here, but you're right that it doesn't seem like she's trying to make any overt political statement. She might even say that she's not political in her content, but by performing a certain aesthetic and in claiming that she's, or like not being explicitly political, it's still making political statements. And I mean, typically what I see from reels and things like this, specifically about like marriage, like Christian marriage, is there's an aesthetic performance of purity and like holiness. And you can see that by the way that people dress, but also by the way that people move, by the way that people smile, the way that the camera is moving. If you're steeped in this for a long time like we were, you can see the like the cookie cutter that people have forced themselves through in order to perform this kind of aesthetic of purity. And that is in itself a political statement.
Well, and yeah, she would definitely see this as not being political at all. She would see it as like completely apolitical. In my opinion, nothing is apolitical.
Yeah.
Everything is political. And we have to understand the context in which this like TikTok is steeped, because she's referencing a Passion Conference, which is an evangelical right-wing conservative conference.
Yeah.
And she's talking about marriage and like, yeah, like you're saying, giving this aesthetic of purity. And that is dog whistling to like purity and modesty culture and this push for specifically young white people to get married so that we can outnumber the Muslims. Like all of that is attached to what she's saying, whether or not she realizes it or not.
Yeah. And I mean, it's worth saying in that like, you don't have to be white actually to reference that or to be an asset to that culture, to that project. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
And I think this goes back to her TikToks not being super well thought out and a lot of them being a little bit surface level, because she had a recent TikTok where she was talking about ICE and like speaking out against ICE almost. And that's a little confusing when you compare it to this TikTok where she's talking about passion, and like passion would, like the people involved with passion would be very much like fans of Turning Point USA and it being a very right coded thing, but then you're also not fond of ICE, and it's just, it seems very confused.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a direct connection. Cliff Connectley, personal friends with Charlie Kirk, massive supporter of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk quite literally helped Stephen Miller get into office and praises him. Stephen Miller is quite literally a Nazi.
Yeah.
Like he is literally a white supremacist who is literally like behind creating the structure that the executive branch currently has so that it could procure massive amounts, like military level funding for ICE to send ICE out to do the things that it's doing. So like Cliff Connectley, even though he says things that, you know, at Passion, like I think I saw something from Passion where he's like, I'm not here. We're
going to talk about that.
Yeah, well, maybe we should get to it. But he's like, I'm not here to promote anything about politics. Okay, well, you have like a direct line of endorsements going straight to ICE.
Right. Yeah.
So...
yeah, we're going to get to that. I want to kind of like hold off on some of that critique until because I have a TikTok where he's talking about that. But yeah, the like optics of I'm being apolitical and I'm not right or left. It's like, no, everybody is, everything is political.
Yeah. Because
you can't untie yourself and statements that you make from the context in which they're being said.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. I don't want to jump ahead too much. Me, when I helped raise $500,000 plus at Passion for Bible translations, I gave $5. Some of the comments say, last year I donated $500. I only gave $20, girl. Any amount matters to the Lord. I gave $10. Service absolutely sucked and took like 20 minutes to load, but worth it to see us exceed the goal. God doesn't value those who gave more over those who couldn't. All right, so as far as I understand, at Passion, they had a donation drive, and donation drives are not bad things, obviously. Donation drives are great things. But what you're donating your money to matters. And in this case, it looks like they're donating it to organizations doing Bible translations, which in my opinion, especially in the world that we live in right now, is probably not the best organization to be giving your money to. I mean, I think that translations of any works into other languages, not just the Bible, are an important thing. But right now, especially, I think that supporting organizations that do real tangible work with meeting people's actual like tangible needs is probably more important than translating the Bible.
I'll come down on this much harder.
Okay.
In that my last video, which as of the filming of this is not out yet, but by the time this is out, my video will probably be out. Long story short, since the 1950s, 1960s, there's been a long-term psychological operation that the CIA, the USAID, U.S. Intelligence Agency, the U.S. military has done working with military dictatorships in Latin America and Wycliffe Bible translators to adapt and groom indigenous people for colonization so that they don't have to kill as many of them while moving them to reservations. If the people resisted, and they did, they killed them anyway. But they didn't have to kill as many, and they could colonize more people, move them to reservations more easily if they use Bible translators going into indigenous communities saying, we just want to help you. We just want to give you the Bible. By the way, we're going to create a literacy and bilingual school here. You should all move off of your land and over here so that you can get free training to like learn how to read in different languages. And also we'll give you certain types of medicine, which you didn't really need as indigenous people. Actually, they're healthier than the colonists. And we're going to basically get you off of land that is very valuable so that specifically oil companies could utilize it. I talk about that in my video. So yeah, when I hear Bible translators, I hear colonizer. Yeah. And basically in the carrot and stick operation, the Bible translators are the carrot. But they work with the stick. Right. The stick being people murdering you. Yeah. And I mean, that kind of thing still is, because this was in like the 70s, 80s. Yeah. This kind of stuff still happens. Well, I was going to say to a lesser degree, but that's not true, actually. Yeah. This stuff still happens where missionaries will go into, more remote parts of the world, and it's kind of under this guise of, we're going to translate the Bible, we're going to preach to you, we're going to offer you medical services that we say that you need, and education that we say that you need. And the education, of course, is all informed from like a very Western idea of like what education and history is, which is problematic in itself. But then they'll work with, moving people off land so that capitalists can come in to exploit the resources that originally belonged to the people that lived there. Yeah. And they'll also at the same time tell indigenous folks that their spiritual practices and culture that they had before the missionaries came were demonic. And degenerate, which is like a Nazi term, and that they need to completely change their culture. Well, they'll say like, oh, we're not trying to completely change their culture, but like they are to conform to like a Western idea of like what is appropriate and what is civilized. And that's something that still happens all over the world today. And so, in itself, when we think about Bible translation, that seems like it could be an innocuous thing where it's like, oh, like, translating any book into a different language is, I can't see a harm in that. But when it's like specifically evangelical organizations doing it,
there's probably way more harm being caused by it than anything good. And something else I want to point out about this is that I calculated $189 per ticket times 45,000 people, and the total was $8.5 million. So the organizers of Passion grossed $8.5 million from this. Of course, you have to subtract like the cost it went into putting on the conference. Like you have to subtract the venue fees, security, equipment, flying the speakers in, paying the speakers, presumably. You have to subtract all of that. But still, $8.5 million, I don't think they spent $8.5 million putting this conference on. And the founders of the conference, Louis Giglio and Chris Tomlin, are both millionaires themselves.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the idea of having people that already paid to come to your conference, who are mostly young folks, college-age students, who probably don't have that much money, getting them to then donate to this nonprofit organization on your behalf, instead of taking a cut from what you made from putting this conference on and just donating it yourself as an organization, I feel like that's a really bad look. Like, why aren't you just donating your money yourself?
Young people who are not questioning of capitalism are not going to be asking those questions, though. You know what I mean? Like, they think that capitalism works on, well, like, you do business, yes, but you're fair about it. You're nice about it. And we're Christians, so obviously we have, like, good, morals about it. And no, I mean, I don't think there's any ethical way to do capitalism. It's, like, defined as something unethical, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, like, $8.5 million for an evangelical organization that, like, does events. They probably could have, in the donations that they get throughout the year and from merchandise and all that kind of stuff, I would bet, could have put all of this on without charging anything and still been just fine.
Yeah, because, like, the whole company, it's not just the conference. They have, like, their music and their record label and their mega church and, like, all this other stuff that they do.
I doubt they needed the ticket sales to actually be in the black for that year, Yeah. And again, even just the individuals that are on in the leadership of Passion could finance this themselves.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say is $8.5 million is around the same amount that of the yearly budget of every single atheist organization in the country combined.
Yeah.
Their ticket sales is our yearly budget for all of them.
Yeah. And I saw some comments of people being like, oh, because there was some critique from actual Christians who thought that them asking for their people that were showing up to the conference to donate instead of them donating, they thought that was weird. And there were comments of people replying and being like, oh, well, I bet they actually didn't make any money from this conference. They probably just broke even. And I'm like, I don't think so.
I doubt that.
Because considering that Louis Giglio, like, this is his main thing. Chris Tomlin, he's done other things that would generate him money. Louis Giglio, he is known for starting the Passion conferences. The dude is a millionaire and now a pastor at a mega church that's very successful and probably also pulling in millions each year.
Yeah.
Do you think that he would continue to put on these conferences if he was just breaking even with them?
Right.
No. Like, and it wouldn't make, like, his net worth wouldn't make any sense then. Like, no, they're making money from this. This is a concert. Yeah. Like, they're making money.
It's a concert.
But you're getting, in my opinion, way less value at this conference at this concert because it's just a church service. Like, the only difference is, like, there's big screens and there's a lot of people and you're in this big venue and it's drawn out over 3 days. But they're preaching like a pastor would preach. Their talks are anything. You would go to any church and hear the exact same talk. The music, it's like maybe it's the production's better or something, but, like, they're still playing worship music.
Yeah.
Like, for me, I don't understand the draw. And I have the same criticisms of Girls Gone Bible's World Tour because they were actually charging, I think, even more than the Passion Conference was charging for their tickets. And I'm like, all they do is literally just sit on stage and tell their testimony and cry for like an hour.
Yeah.
Why are people paying to go see that?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Okay, so in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is where I'm from, unfortunately, you could absolutely find a megachurch service that's happening on Friday in the morning, and then one in the afternoon, and one in the evening. Go to that, and find other megachurches that have services or something going on Saturday morning, afternoon, evening, Sunday morning, afternoon, evening, and you could megachurch hop and go to all of that for free. And I think the production would be the same level. It's DFW.
Yeah,
they have
that's true.
DFW and Houston
Prestonwood.
have some of the biggest, most highly produced like megachurch services in the world. And so you could absolutely do that completely for free. So what the draw here is that it's all in one place, that there's 45,000 people who all have bought into the collective like branding of this, that it has one common identity.
Yeah.
Like we're not just going to different church services to experience the programming. It's not about the programming.
Yeah.
It's about buying, like literally purchasing the experience that you have when you accept that the brand alone sets this apart from the actual programming itself. Like, I'm not going to a bunch of church services and hearing a bunch of great messages. I'm going to Passion.
Yeah, you're paying for the brand name.
Yeah.
It's like with
it's designer church.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was like, it's like luxury brands like Gucci. Like, I have such opinions about luxury brands, but I think almost all of them are like so fucking ugly. And like people are paying for a purse that says Gucci on it and that's it. This is the same thing. Like, you're paying to be able to say you went to Passion.
Yeah.
And if you want to do that, okay. But like, to me, I just don't get the appeal. Like, you're spending $200 to go watch 70-year-old Cliff Knechtle say the same fucking thing he's been saying for like 30 years.
Watch him say that on YouTube like 100 times.
Yeah. Like, literally, why?
Yeah.
Okay, we need to move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cliff really doing everything but sitting in that chair, huh? Okay, this I just kind of thought was funny because Cliff Knechtle, he's a celebrity apologist. He's always been kind of a name within evangelical spaces, but I think he's gotten even more name recognition within the last couple of years because he's been working with a lot of Christian influencers on all platforms, but mostly YouTube. Like, he's gone on like George Janko, and George Janko
He even went on Impulsive as
oh
well.
yeah,
he went on
Impulsive. Yeah. Like, he's gone on some like big shows.
Mm-hmm.
And he is known for having this like cliff stance where he like kind of bends his knees and like, I can't even do it, but like, yeah, he like kind of crouches down and bends his knees. And that's a stance that all of the up and coming Christian influencers like Bryce Crawford, who is being kind of mentored by Cliff Knechtle, as far as I can understand, they're all imitating that stance now, which I don't know. I find strange.
I think the use for it is that, one, like, I would bet that he's just always been like that. That's like a really common like neurodivergent thing, not being able to sit in a chair normally. But also, like, he's like 70 and he's a lanky guy. He probably is trying to stay limber so that he doesn't get stiff because he's standing or sitting for a long time.
Yeah.
That's probably all it is. But now it's like this cultural thing to imitate that almost like it's like virtue signaling in a way for people like Bryce Crawford. Like, I'm getting ready to spread the gospel.
That's exactly what it is. It is very much this virtue signaling, like, I'm preparing for battle kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Because the time I saw Bryce Crawford do this stance in a way that got like the most views, I think, on TikTok or Instagram or something, he was standing in front of this sign for this big Pride event or like Pride parade. I'm not sure what city it was in, but he was standing in front of this huge Pride display, and he was doing the stance, and the caption was preaching the gospel at pride.
Yeah.
And he's going there to
go to war with
people and try to convince them to not be gay anymore. Like, that's even a choice. But yeah, it's like this, it's supposed to like give this air of like, I don't even know how I want to say it. Like,
he's literally posturing like a fighter, like a soldier, like someone.
But like the posture itself doesn't seem intimidating, but it's still supposed to give this air of, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm here as a warrior for Christ.
Yeah.
And so like that's why I find the Cliff stance very cringe.
Literally, it's just an old man trying to stay limber, trying to stretch, like the doctor said.
But now let's look at a little bit at what Cliff had to say during his talk at Passion. And this has to do with the political stuff we were talking about before.
I'll convince you to vote for a political party or for a particular politician. Because I am convinced that the solution to America's problems is not the conservative agenda, it's not the liberal agenda. It's the kingdom of God. It's the rule of Jesus Christ. What do you want to do? Do you want to pass a bunch of laws to change people's behavior? Christ goes deeper. Christ says, I want to change your heart, your motives, your ambitions, your goals in life. You live for the kingdom of God. Second point, should you be involved politically? Absolutely yes. God has instituted government to maintain justice, to protect citizens. You and I as Americans have the right to vote. Please vote. Vote your conscience. Study the issues. Study the Bible. Have a biblical worldview of immigration, abortion, LGBTQ, money, helping the poor, respecting the rights of the individual, justice, equality, love.
I have so many thoughts on this, but why don't you go first?
I'm not saying what you need to do politically. That's not the point. I am just going to say that you should think about this in a using coded language for voting for Christian nationalist agendas.
Exactly.
Like he laid out a political project right there. He just didn't say vote for this candidate.
He's said vote in a, like, I want you to have a biblical worldview and that inform how you vote. Biblical worldview, the only people that use that phrase are people on the right.
Yeah.
And having a biblical worldview is just synonymous with having right-wing Republican politics.
Yeah.
That is what that is. And so he's saying like, oh, I'm not telling you what to vote or what to do or how to think politically. But if you read the Bible, you will naturally come to the conclusions that you should vote in this way. Mm-hmm. And if you don't read the Bible in that way, then you're doing something wrong. And so I feel like it's a way to like almost cover his ass where he can have plausible deniability. Yeah. Like, I'm not endorsing any political candidate, but also I kind of am too.
Yeah, I'm not dirtying my hands with the stuff of the world. I'm doing something higher. But the thing that's higher is dirtying your hands with the stuff of the world.
And going back to, you cannot divorce what he's saying from the context in which it's being said, kind of what I mentioned earlier, is that, okay, Cliff is kind of presenting himself as like not associating necessarily with any political party or any side of the political spectrum. But if you look at who Cliff has worked with in the past, it's exclusively right-wingers and like not even right-wingers, like far-right people.
Outright fascists. Charlie Kirk, who's basically, who I showed recently, has basically the same politics as the KKK.
Yeah. Like he's exclusively worked with them. You see what podcasts he goes on. They're exclusively like these right-coded podcasts. So it's like, that's really convenient for you to say, oh, I'm not involving myself in politics. Meanwhile, your actions like speak much louder. And then he's saying like the whole thing about how government has been instituted by God. And
that's an explicitly Christian nationalist talking point.
Yeah.
That's exactly, I've seen them say that in the halls of power in Texas to me. I have seen them in person say government was given by God for man. And that's why it needs to honor God, and we need to have God's rules and power.
But yet you can read the Bible in a way where like Jesus was like kind of anti-government in a way.
I mean, yeah.
So it's like,
if you're a historian, yes.
They want to appeal to like, oh, you should just be able to read the Bible and the Bible will just tell you. But it's like, no, that doesn't work. People interpret the Bible in very, very different ways, because someone can read the Bible and come away with a very different attitude towards the government than you have.
But they can say that. They can say, just read the Bible and come to your own conclusions and then vote your conscience, because they know that what influences people is something that liberals don't realize, is that what influences people is the environment in which they're in. And these people know that they control the environment, the social environment in which all of these young people exist. So they can say, read the Bible, come to your own conclusions, and genuinely mean that. And then the kid genuinely does that, and they come to the same conclusions as Cliff and his billionaire backers and the Republicans that they support. Why? Because Cliff and all of those people control the world that those kids grow up in, and those kids don't even realize that they're being politically messaged constantly.
Yeah. So
that if they just read a piece of text, they will automatically interpret it in the same way as the religious right-wingers that are controlling them.
I will say that does happen kind of on both sides. I don't think that you can read something like the Bible or any like literary text and approach it without having your own like subjective experience color it.
Right.
Like,
oh, yeah.
That's
absolutely.
impossible to do. Like, you're always going to bring your bias into that. And like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because your personal experience can be very informative and it can help you make like consider good things when you're reading through a text. But you do need to have an awareness of that. And like, this is not, again, something that's not taught in these spaces.
They're actively advocating against the idea that you should bring in your own experience while actively creating the experience that people bring in. So it's the same thing as they say with the music, you know, it's like, it's coerced. Instead of informed consent, it's just coercion.
Yep. All right. Last TikTok that I want us to look at. POV, the devil tries to steal your joy by having hundreds of cars towed after a Christian conference, but the enemy underestimated our God. What was meant to steal our joy turned into an opportunity to join in fellowship and prayer, to share testimonies and serve those around us. Joy isn't situational, it's spiritual.
I feel like this it really illustrates what we were just talking about. So what happened is that these people all got exploited by a predatory business.
Yep.
Right? And then when they all got together and tried to like put up resistance to it, or they all had to collectively deal with that experience, it actually birthed something larger, a kind of consciousness of their class. That's what happened.
Yeah.
However, these are all kids that just went to the conservative Christian show. And so what they see is the devil tried to do something, but God, instead of saying like a business tried to exploit us, but we as people came together and we built something positive out of that experience, or we resisted it all collectively.
Yeah.
Like this so easily, if you were raised in a more like if you were raised, you know, in the Soviet Union, even if you were not like, your family wasn't particularly like talking about politics much, and you had that experience in America, you'd be like, oh yes, and then we all got together and we said, these awful capitalists, you know, because that's a description of what happened. But these people didn't have that influence, so they didn't describe what actually happened. They described a spiritual metaphor for something that allows, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm losing my train of thought here, but basically what I'm trying to say is that like their experiences colored the way that they interpreted that, and different experiences would have colored that completely differently in a way that they would see as communist and satanic.
Well, I think that you put that actually in much better words than what I was going to say about this, because I was going to say, like, I'm glad that they were able to find joy and stay positive in this moment
Absolutely.
of something that was probably super irritating, because nobody likes to get their car towed. And I'm sure there's a whole conversation about, like, where did they park? Why did they park somewhere and not pay for it? You know, that's a whole separate conversation. But, and like, you know, I have issues with metered parking and all that kind of stuff. But it also, it's like, again, the elevating this to a level where you can't just be like, oh man, that sucks that I got my car towed after this conference and now I have to go to the towing place and get my car and wait with a bunch of other people. This is super annoying, but you know what? I'm going to make the best of it. You can't just see it like for a simple thing. It's like you have to interpret it as the devil himself did this to get back at me, because he knew that I was going to a Christian conference where I was worshiping God and he didn't like that. So he had my car towed. And it's like, no, girly, you just parked and didn't pay for it. Like, okay, you don't have to make it like everything's so life or death. Like, it's not that serious.
But I mean, the devil is the ultimate tool of scapegoating. Like, if you want to get away with doing something, you say that another group of people is to blame and you associate them with the devil. That's happened with trans people. It's happened with black people. It's happened with Jews. It's happened to all sorts of minority women, people who are into the occult. And now, you know, like, it's even being, the devil is even being used as a scapegoat so that capitalists can literally just like no one is going, is this system of towing people even ethical? Should this industry even exist? They're not asking that question because ultimately, you know, evangelical Christianity and exploitative capitalism, they're the same thing in the United States. And so, of course, if a business does something bad, you don't blame it on business. You blame it on the devil.
Well, I think even, like, at least, you know, if you're not going to make it in your thought process to the point of being like, oh, this capitalism sucks and this kind of sucks that a company can do this to your property, not even making it to that, but at least, like, making it to maybe you made a mistake. You know,
I mean,
like, maybe you just should have parked somewhere else. And, like, instead you have to, like, put that blame onto, like, the devil. I don't know. It
could have been a mistake of the people who were acquiring parking spaces for the Passion Conference attendees.
That's true.
You know, it could be the organizers of Passion who actually are kind of more to blame for that, not the kids. Yeah. But, of course, again, no, this is a supernatural spiritual battle. It has nothing to do with flesh and blood or steel.
All right, so that is all the TikToks that I wanted us to look at, but I do have one more thing that I want to close out this video with, and
I know what this one is.
Yeah. So, Louis Giglio, founder of Passion with Chris Tomlin, back in 2020, he had a sit-down conversation with the Chick-fil-A CEO and Christian rapper Lecrae, and they were talking about racism, and racism specifically in Atlanta. And he ended up saying, or making a case for why we should change the phrase white privilege to white blessing. And I want us to look at a clip of that. Hey guys, Editing Taylor here. So I was going to put in the clip from Passion City Church with Louis Giglio talking to Lecrae and the Chick-fil-A CEO. But unfortunately, I rendered the project, uploaded it to YouTube, and it turns out that Passion City Church copyrights all their content, and I cannot get it past the copyright detector. I think it's pretty crazy that a church has copyrighted their content. I think that goes to show you that this is all a business and not about community or anything like that. So in lieu of showing you the actual clip, I am just going to read a transcript. And so this is primarily Louis Giglio talking and directing most of the conversation to Lecrae. Louis Giglio says, You know, Lecrae, it's interesting because I feel like on the inside of the church, we're fighting this historical context you talk about. In other words, we love the blessing of the cross, but we don't love to sit in it and realize this is what God's asking me to do: die to myself and to live for Him, whatever context that's going to look like for me. But I want to flip that upside down because I think the other side of it is true with our nation's history. We understand the curse that was slavery, white people do, and we say that was bad. But we missed the blessing of slavery, that it actually built up the framework for the world that white people live in and lived in. And so a lot of people call this white privilege. And when you say those two words, it just is like a fuse goes off for a lot of white people because they don't want somebody telling them to check their privilege. And so I know that you and I have both struggled in these days with, hey, if the phrase is a trip up, let's get over the phrase and let's get down to the heart. Let's get down to what then do you want to call it? And I think maybe a great thing for me is to call it white blessing, that I'm living in the blessing of the curse that happened generationally that allowed me to grow up in Atlanta. And you know, you talk about being 57, and if you were 57, I can't imagine being that old then and being 57. But I've said to our church, Lecrae, a few weeks ago when I was born, the day I was born on Boulevard at Georgia Baptist Hospital in 1958, Black people did not have equal rights in the city. Not my grandparents' lifetime or their lifetime. In my lifetime, this is right now what we're talking about today, and call it what you want. Dan, I think the issue begins with a white person saying, I want to try to put myself in somebody else's shoes. And I find it far easier to dismiss it all by saying, you know, that's not me. That doesn't reflect me. And I just went through diversity training at my job for the last 4 days. And so that's all we hear. That's not the way I am. But I feel like dismissing it just as a response probably is an indication that there's something a little bit bigger under the surface that maybe we don't want to deal with. Isn't that so insane?
That was like the most ignorant thing I've ever heard. Like, the Grand Wizard of the KKK, as heard on Bryce Crawford's YouTube channel, asked Bryce, why are the nations of the United States and the nations of Europe, why are they so blessed? And then Bryce goes, I don't know. And then he says, because God blessed them. That's why we're so much further advanced than everywhere else. Or because God blessed them.
We stole shit from other people.
But like, this is crazy because he's actually acknowledging that we like built this nation on slavery, and the wealth that we have is in part due to the massive hundreds of years long project of exploitation of anyone that is not a white Protestant Christian. And he's saying that we should call the artifacts of that, the product of that, a blessing. I mean, you can call it a consequence of slavery. Yeah, we should. I think we absolutely should. But to call it a blessing reframes it as this is a thing that should not be defined by its past. You know, it should not be thought of in context that like it exists because we stole it. Right?
Yeah, well, here's the thing is that he does kind of acknowledge that this is a structure, a man-made structure that white men built hundreds of years ago. And that is why we have what we have now, where white people do have the privilege that they have. He acknowledges that, but at the same time, he calls it a curse. Which to me, like, he's using this like supernatural language where it's not just something that's like physical and man-made. It's a curse that befell this nation from Satan or demons. And I feel like that kind of takes the blame away from the people that built this structure and puts it on something else that's very like ambiguous and nebulous and like where you can't actually hold those people accountable.
Yeah.
But then he's also saying we as white people were in a blessing because of that. And like the term blessing, that means that God is looking upon certain people favorably, presumably because they're doing they're following God's commands.
Yeah.
So by calling white privilege white blessing, you're saying white people deserve what they have because
at least it's the will of God.
It's the will of God because they're doing something right or they have done something right. And so like that doesn't make sense. And that also doesn't seem like what he's trying to say at the same time, because he also acknowledges that slavery was bad and white people did it. So it's like, I don't understand what he was trying to say with it. And also saying all of this to a Black person, like, is so fucked up. And I can't imagine like what Lecrae was thinking when he was saying.
Lecrae is one of the biggest tokens I've ever seen. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Is crazy. The stuff that he allows on his own platform it's shit like that all the time.
I did see, because Louis Giglio ended up apologizing for this, and I think that reporters asked Lecrae what he thought about it, and he said that he was very uncomfortable when he was saying this, but I don't know if it was just later he was saying he was uncomfortable because it was controversial or people found it controversial. But yeah, the whole thing is very strange, and I don't know. It's like he was using like KKK language.
Yeah.
Without being aware that he is, I think.
Another effect of this is that if you use that paradigm, it makes you de-emphasize the fact that that process by which the blessing was occurred, by which the wealth was accrued here, is still ongoing. Like, it's still happening. The thing that did all of that was, like unethical business practices. Like, it was like slaves didn't exist because it was like, oh, we just hate Black people, so we want to enslave them. No, it was like, we want to make money, and this is a way that we can make money.
Yeah.
It was a business. And so it's still like business exploitation, the exploitation of capitalism itself, which is still like exploiting people both inside and outside of this country. So to call it a blessing now is like to say that the methods by which the wealth in this country is accrued is a blessing and the will of God, and so we shouldn't change it.
Yeah. And also in the end, he was saying, like, kind of talking about how white people should be able to put themselves in other people's shoes, which I found like so ironic, because you're saying...
I thought he was saying that it's bad that white people have to deal with the pressure of having to put themselves in other people's shoes.
I feel like he was saying both at the same time, because he was saying that we should be able to, but also at the same time he's saying, well, we need to change how this is phrased because it hurts white people's feelings.
Yeah.
So it's like, we need to coddle white people and like cater to how they respond to a phrase, but we're also ignoring the marginalized community that has actually been historically hurt by this phenomenon and by slavery. And like all of it was like very, very, very confused. But I just kind of thought, like, you're telling other people, it seemed like to me, that you should be able to put yourself in other people's shoes, but then you don't have the awareness to put yourself in like Lecrae's shoes and think about how Lecrae might feel that you're saying that we should call white privilege white blessing. It's like, you don't, like, what are you saying? I think it was just like a confused mess that is born out of like ignorance. Probably the people that he is surrounded by are honestly white supremacists and use this type of language. And also trying to somewhat find a moral center in all of that. And so it like ended up being like this really confused mess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is the founder of Passion.
Fantastic, incredible influence that these kids are undergoing at Passion.
I feel like this video kind of like, we started with talking about wife hunting and ending with talking about just like blatant racism and like, capitalism and class consciousness. And
I think that's fine. I mean, hey, if you don't want to use some of that, I'll put it on my second channel because I thought it was great.
Okay. No, I will use all of it. I just thought it was funny how it's like this video really... we got into a lot of topics on this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and a huge thank you to my patrons who help make these videos possible. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. If you'd like to follow me on social media, my Instagram is Taylor_the_Antibot. And if you'd like to consider supporting this channel financially, a link to my Patreon will be down in the description, and we'll see you on the next one. Say bye!